welcome to Finland. We're right up in the north on the Arctic Circle, and we're here for the 4th Tundra Raid. This is Patrick Winston. I'll be trying to bring you the action that takes place up here in the Arctic wastes. Now, it's a 2,000-kilometer raid, or rally if you'd rather call it that, taking place over 8 days. Very much a team event, 3 teams, 3 people in each team, and 1 man on each snowmobile. One of the snowmobiles having to tow a safety sled that has vital stores, extra fuel, extra parts, and certainly sleeping bags and such like. As I say, 2,000 kilometers to be covered, and planned up to 4 special stages in each day, but this event in history has been very dependent on the weather conditions, and no doubt this year will be no different to that. And in fact, the big problem this year is the lack of snow. They were unfortunate, didn't get the big dump at the early part of the season that they had in the Alps, and as a result, there's never really been a deep base. And at this time of year, late March, it's certainly a major problem. Not only the snow conditions, also it's been very warm throughout the early spring, and the lakes deemed not to be safe in many of the regions, and so the routes will have to be changed as a result of that. 15 special stages planned, and 8 teams entered into the professional, or should I say semi-professional groups, with many others in what they call the adventure group, who will be traveling over a smaller distance. For the first day's racing, the start numbers are drawn out, and 8 teams, as I say, in the semi-professional. The favourites very much Limimi from Sundankili.
Hello everybody. As the representative of the Oulu City Council and her Economic Development Unit, I would like to tell you something special about Oulu, the northern capital of Finland. Oulu is known as a city of technology, or as we call it now, as a know-how center, because as early as in 1982, the first science and research park.
So the mayor of Oulu just introducing his town, and this is where the event is due to start. And as he says, the town renowned as a center of technology. Perhaps many of you will have come across these polar heart rate monitors that most athletes have now and use as a training aid. And this is where the polar watches are made. Certainly the first and not the cheapest of watches to buy, but an essential training aid for many.
The 4th time when Tundra is going on here up in the north.
Well, time for a few final preparations of the snowmobiles, or ski bobs.
System is very simple. In case of emergency, the team will pull out the antenna, turn it on by pressing the button here.
Well, an essential training aid,
range
or safety aid, should I say, for this event.
20 kilometers. And how you track it? The organization can actually use this
very much like an
you turn it on,
avalanche monitor, but a little bit bigger, and just in case someone gets lost in the wastes up here. Now, the big problem is not so much the navigation, but the fact that the snowstorms may come in, and if you have a mechanical problem in those sort of conditions, it's essential that the safety teams get to you as quick as possible. Well, we get a chance to have a look at the teams as they make their final preparations in Oulu. The news is not good for the first day's competition, and there's a chance that the start may have to be reallocated to Rovaniemi, and they may move across there this evening. Team number 6 is the tracker team from Rovaniemi.
Of course, it's really that we have to change the start from Oulu up to Rovaniemi.
Well, there you get it.
So that means 200 kilometers.
The start position has changed, so they're moving north 200 kilometers in search of a little bit more snow and a few lakes that have thicker ice on them.
and still we have.
That's always the organiser's nightmare, not knowing when the ice on the lakes is safe or not. At this time of year, you tend to get a little bit of surface water on the ice, and that provides huge problems. So there you see it, the event moving north 245 kilometres, and they'll just do that in their own time, find their own way up there, and just taking it slowly. Our first chance to get a look at these snowmobiles, and for those of you who are technically minded, really the favoured group, Lumimi, they're racing on a Polaris RMK, 150 brake horsepower. That's the most powerful of the machines out on this event, but it is a little bit heavier, 230 kilograms. It's just 10 or 15 kilograms heavier than the others. So when they meet soft conditions, we may find that Lumimi have one or two problems, but they do have the power in hand. Each of the snowmobiles around 300 centimeters, 3 meters long, and really pushing out an enormous amount of power. You can see that the track, the drive belt under the snowmobile is a little bit narrower than it would be for a recreation mobile. So here we see them at the start of the first day on the 22nd of March. The race numbers and the start positions allocated from the draw on the first evening. And certainly an advantage to be in the lead, in that much of the terrain is off-piste, should we call it, out in the woodland, and it's very bumpy indeed, and the more mobiles that go over the ground, the bumpier it gets. Well, they get their final briefing, and this is their route card as such, and they'll be using that for navigation rather than using map and compass, although they'll of course have that at hand. But precious few features on the landscape up here in the northern parts of Finland. So away they go, and it's Lumimi, the first team off. They're from Sodankili, Risto Dianov, Timo Niemela and Ossi Urukainen. They get the race underway. Team number 6 is the tracker team just setting off. Number 5 is Christmas Village, and we'll hear a little bit more about Christmas Village later on. Many of the local towns and resorts sponsor teams. It's a very expensive event, costing around £6,000 to enter. And when you consider that the prize money for winning this event is less than half of that amount, you certainly need a major sponsor to take part. Well, this is our first chance to look at the terrain, and although it's not hugely mountainous, there are plenty of twists and turns. On this sort of leg, they'll be averaging speeds of around 80 kilometers an hour. The slower teams, that's 50 miles an hour, pushing it well up over the 100 kilometer an hour average for the fastest teams. There we see the safety sled in front, and packed in there there'll be 15 gallons or so of fuel, spare fuel, enough to ensure that they can complete the stage. They'll also have sleeping bags, rations if they need them, and of course spare parts for the snowmobiles. Very often they get breakages on the suspension at the front and the skis. Team Arena going well at this stage, but it's Lumimi 1, 2 Lumimi teams in, but it's Lumimi 1 who have the lead at the moment. And a chance for a refueling spot. 1 or 2 checkpoints. It's one of the rules is that the snowmobiles have to stay together throughout the event. And there'll be 1 or 2 checkpoints that the team have to wait until they're all grouped together, and then off they go again. Now out into the open, onto the lake sections. very flat, but you also tend to get a very flat light. It's difficult to see the bumps and read the undulations. And when you're going in excess of 150 kilometers an hour, that can provide major problems indeed. So approaching the end of the first stage on the first day. Lumimi it certainly was with the fastest time at the first checkpoint. And covering the 150 kilometers in just over 2 hours. So that's Lumimi coming in, team number 1. 2 hours 12 and 10 seconds the time for them. Team number 3 is next in, that's Team Arena, 2:26.15, so they've lost 14 minutes on that first stage, and really an indication of how strong that Lumimi team are. But the conditions on this first stage are very much suited to the winning snowmobile, the Polaris RMK. We get a chat with some of the racers after the event.
5 kilometers from the start, my friend, he had a speed of 75 miles per hour, and he hit the rock, and scooter went
So Mikkel
more than
Sornio
70 meters
from
away,
the Pepperoni team,
they separated,
just
and we had
explaining
to
the problems
change
that their
all
team
this,
had.
you see.
Yeah.
And
unsurprisingly, it's that suspension that's given them problems.
Drive to the next road and get the service there. So
And Pepperoni,
more than 1.5
certainly
hours.
one of the
We
favoured
missed
teams
there,
up here, so they'll be
but
disappointed
still
with their
winning.
performance. Well, he reckons they lost an hour and a half on that. That would have put them in touch with the leaders, certainly would have put them up in the first place. Well, on the second stage, they start with a difficult technical section up through the hill, and having to power their way up this steep hill. Team number 5 is Christmas Village. Alsak Nevupio just getting underway. Partitevo will follow him up this hill. Now, you'll notice that they all choose their own track up through this hill, and getting a little more traction in the soft snow. It's an interesting tactic. And trying to keep the weight over the back of the skidoo. Can't afford to let the skis at the front dive into the snow. Well, the hill gets steeper and steeper, no problems as yet, but some of the less experienced drivers. And there we have it from the Pepperoni team. Timo Vartalo having problems with his Lynx Enduro. Well, that will cost them more time. They can't afford that. The Pepperoni team losing an hour and a half, as they said, on that first special stage. And things on this first day of competition not going well for the joint favourites. Christmas Village, that was Partitevo, also having a few problems on the opening of this second stage. They were in third place after the first leg, just 28 minutes down off the leading time of Lumimi. And well, perhaps time to get the shovels out, dig themselves out of trouble. And a little bit of teamwork. And that really is why it's so essential to have 3 team members, and the fact that they stick together is really a safety rule more than anything else. Well, we're going to take a break, but there you see it, Lumimi after the first day. They have a 50-second lead over Team Arena.
The Swatch World Bordercross Tour is pure snowboard racing. Let's get off-piste for long-distance cross-country. Throw everyone into the deep end, and may the best man or woman win. It's how it was meant to be.
The Swatch ISF World Bordercross Tour from Lax, Thursday at 2 CET on Eurosport.
Just try that on this mountain.
welcome back to northern Finland. We're the first day of competition now completed. We move on and we're going to be starting from Sodankylä and racing towards Rovaniemi. And that's a resort better known for its ski jumping and cross-country competition. But the snowmobiles will be visiting there on this day's competition. And then they'll be racing back to Sodankylä, so a long stage planned. And remind you that after the first day of competition, it was Lumimi, the joint favourites, who had the lead. Pepperoni making a bad mistake on the second special stage, getting stuck in the deeper snow. That cost them dearly, and they're down in 5th position. But they were still confident after that first day. Team number 3, Team Arena, in 2nd place after a good second leg. And they're only 50 minutes down off the pace. And there we see the route for today, starting in Sodankylä and racing to Rovaniemi and back. Well, once again, it's going to be taking around the 2.5-hour mark to complete this distance, and certainly exceeding speeds of 140. The mobile's capable of speeds over 170 kilometers an hour. And that, for your interest, is around 105 miles an hour, and that's quite an awesome thought. And despite that, there's still time for a wave. So the teams of 3 setting out on this medium length leg on the second day, and it's the man in front who has the route card. He's the man who does the navigation, and so really the 2 behind just have to make sure they stick in and give themselves a little bit of snow-free or blizzard-free snow. The mobile's throwing up a lot of powder snow behind them, and in these conditions it's not too bad, but in years gone by the weather has changed dramatically over the course of the race, and that certainly may play a major factor later on. Well, blue skies, as you can see, and really gives us a chance to see the Lumimi team in best form on these flat sections across the lake, 150, 160 kilometers an hour, finding nice smooth lines across the snow. And often think it's easy to be one of the later starters in the teams because there are so many tracks to follow. But snowmobiling, very much a popular pastime up in this part of Finland, and so there are tracks absolutely everywhere. And if you don't keep your wits about you, very likely to head off into the wilderness. So, on to the next stage, stage 8, Sodankylä, and another round route, deciding this year to keep Sodankylä the center of the event, and certainly makes it a lot easier, with a few fuel stops, and the marshals beckoning the helicopter just to stay back to keep the spindrift out of the way of the drivers. Well, on stage 8 it was still Lumimi with a lead, but the Pepperoni team, as I said earlier, the favourites at the start, or joint favourites with Lumimi, are starting to come back. 2 bad stages initially. They got up into 2nd place on the 6th stage. The 7th stage was cancelled, and on the 8th stage, Pepperoni also going very well indeed, and starting to threaten the dominance of Lumimi. And that's Lumimi working very well together. Well, this is one of the longer stages, and over 300 kilometers, and they're going to be taking over 5 hours to complete this. But then a short stage on the 9th, which will be a slalom event, more a technical event than anything else, but really gives the athletes a chance to have a rest. And it really is a very draining event indeed. So Lumimi at the end of the 8th stage, still looking very confident indeed, and everything going well for them. At the end of the 8th, they have a lead now of over 2 hours. The Pepperoni team, though, starting to come back. They were only 5 minutes behind on the 8th stage. The 9th stage, the slalom. Slightly strange that they all go together in this event rather than having a relay event. But it's the last man that crossed the line. It's his time that is taken. And just a chance to see how they maneuver these machines. Now, the weight distribution is very important indeed. You can't bank the machine like you can a motorbike. And so the weight, very important to get it on the inside of the turn, get some pressure onto the rear drive belt. But for each condition, the technique will change. In powder snow, it's very different indeed. And then it becomes more like a surfboard. Rather surprising to me that the snowmobile towing the sled has always elected to go into second place. I would have thought that he was most likely to be the slowest of the three, and therefore you might as well get the two fast races out in front and completed before the slow one comes along. But no. The sled is in second place with all the teams. So almost completing the slalom event. The times will be taken and added up and multiplied to give them a realistic stage time. And it's still Lumimi though with a convincing lead, but it's the Pepperoni team who are doing exceedingly well in this event and gaining a little bit of time. So they gain 13 minutes, but they're still over 2 hours behind. But Pepperoni starting to look good.
Nolan and Eurosport offer you the chance to win a weekend for two at the Imola Grand Prix. You can also win Nolan helmets. To play and win, call the Eurosport hotline now. And good luck.
There's another heavyweight explosion on Eurosport on Friday. It comes to you from Worley in the United States, where four big Americans get into the ring. Terence Lewis joins battle with Levi Billups. Then Jesse Ferguson comes head-to-head with Thomas Williams. All of them big men with big punches. Boxing, Lewis versus Billups and Ferguson versus Williams. Friday at 9:30 CET on Eurosport. Think Le Mans, think 24 hours, but this weekend, think two wheels, not four. The famous circuit in Western France hosts the biggest event in the endurance bike racing season. And all weekend, Eurosport will bring you live updates. The Le Mans 24 hours starts Saturday at 2:45 CET, live on Eurosport, and all weekend long.
Well, welcome back to the Tundra Raid, once again in Finland. And we're now preparing for stages 9 and 10. And very demanding stretch of terrain they have to cross today. And they're presently in Sodankylä. A little bit of preparation in a derelict kitchen. And a chance to put the snowmobiles back into working order. Only one technical checkpoint on this event. But the athletes working furiously overnight to get their snowmobiles up to 100%, and then once again out into the cold. They're now at about halfway through. After the first 8 stages, it was Lumimi in the lead. Their total time of 11:49. That's going to be over halfway. Expected to take around 20 hours for the full 2,000 kilometer distance. There you get a good look at the drive belt. And we've had 1 or 2 broken drive belts on the event so far. Today's event going from Sodankylä to Saariselkä. And not all going perfectly for all the competitors. Well, there you see it, 296 kilometers to be covered. And that's going to take up 2 stages. They'll race to Saariselkä and then back again, making up the 2 stages over different routes. There you see one of the markers, and essential that they go past each of the markers. 3-hour penalty if you miss one of the markers on the route. A 6-hour penalty if it happens again. And if you have 3 offences throughout the raid, then you're excluded from the race. Well, here we see the first of the major crashes. And this is Team 5, it's Christmas Village, and it looks like Nitivopio from Oulu. So a local man having a few problems, and the terrain catching him out. And they'll just go through a few checks to make sure everything's all right, and the whole team there to offer a hand, and 1 or 2 spectators as well getting in to offer words of advice. So it looks as though the drive belt has jammed on this occasion. And that's going to be a costly mistake for the Christmas Village team, who after the first 8 legs were still doing okay and lying in 4th place. 5 hours down on the leaders, but in 4th out of the remaining 6. 2 teams dropped out so far. Lumimi 2 have dropped out. And the Polar Heart Rate team have also had to drop out because of technical problems. Well, this is one of the high-speed stretches, over 100 kilometers an hour through this very narrow trail in the woodland. And a typical landscape for this part of Finland. The trees noticeably smaller than you'd find them further south in the country. And I guess that's due to the cold, harsh conditions in this land of snow and lakes. Well, stage 9 due to finish at Raihala. And once again, it's the Pepperoni team looking good on this leg. Lumimi 1 are up there, very much in the run of things. Team Tomoki, for the first time, coming into the 4. And Team Arena, who were doing so well in the opening 2 stages, they're dropping back a little bit. They've had technical problems on this 9th stage. They're over 2 hours behind at the moment. Well, as with all motor events, very much a question of reliability and consistency. And when you look at the time spread after this ninth leg, you'll find that the leaders have so far taken 13 hours, 51 minutes. And those in 6th place are a full 10 hours behind that time. And most of that time being taken up with mechanical repairs, although one or two teams finding themselves lost in the tundra. But as yet, the conditions have been very kind indeed. So that 9th stage completed. The first half of the day's work is done. Rajala is the location, and a chance just to repair a few of the spares. I think it was the track that's provided the problem, so they've got to take off all the runners and replace the track. And that looks like a new ski that's going on. And so all these competitors, skilled mechanics, as well as hardy athletes. And just when you thought you'd thought of every use for masking tape, someone comes up with another one. And on this occasion, just to stop the frostbite, I think I'd prefer the normal balaclava myself, but masking tape once again comes to the rescue. So a little bit of precision engineering, and the Pepperoni Zenith team getting their machines back into action. Well, they did very well on that 9th stage. They won that by 13 minutes. They're now still 2 hours 21 minutes behind the leaders, but Pepperoni starting to threaten. A mistake or a mechanical failure in the Lumimi team may well let those Pepperoni boys in on the score. So once again, getting themselves prepared for the 10th stage, moving further north, and a chance just to go through the equipment that they use for this. On the snowmobile, you have to have an emergency breaker that's a little cord that's attached to the driver somewhere, either the wrist or the ankle. And if you fall off the snowmobile, this will disconnect the engine, and what's known as an emergency breaker. Very similar to those that they use on jet skis. And that's just to ensure that your snowmobile doesn't head off across the tundra without you. And there you can see that although it appears flat, there are one or two very severe bumps. And the light today a lot flatter on this stage 10 and much harder to read the undulations. And so one or two incidents, very likely indeed. So the 10th stage racing up to Soriselka, where they'll have a little bit of a rest. Soriselka, very much recreation, winter recreation resort. And well, snowmobiling, very popular in these parts. It's cross-country skiing that really is the major sport. And they head off into the wilderness for a little bit of peace and quiet. But they're not going to get it today, as the Tundra event comes flying through their area. So the first 10 completed. The athletes starting to look a little bit fatigued. But a chance for some food, a little bit of R&R in Soriselka. After 10 stages then, Lumimi still with the lead, but it was Pepperoni Zenith who won that 10th stage, only 17 seconds ahead. The difference between the two then is still 2 hours 21. Lumimi leading, Pepperoni in second, and Team Arena now in third place. So still 3 more stages left on this Tundra Raid. Stay with us, we'll be back just after this break.
nicht für alle gleich. Kinderarbeit zerstört Körper und Seele. Helfen Sie diesen Kindern und rufen Sie jetzt an unter 0183 201 202.
Big Star, the legendary blue jeans.
The Mountain Bike World Cup. They go up, they go down. Whether it's cross-country or downhill, it's 5 months of the toughest racing across 4 continents: Europe, North America, Africa and Australasia. Eurosport keeps you up to date. The Mountain Bike World Cup from San Francisco, Thursday at 2:30 CET on Eurosport. With Giant, Earth, Wind and Bicycles. And Shimano, original bike components. The clay courts are back. The ATP Tour is in Estoril and those baseline specialists are back on their favourite surface. The run into the French Open starts here and the big names don't want to miss out. The Estoril Open, today at 3 CET, live on Eurosport. With Eutelsat, satellite TV.
Welcome back once again to Finland for this Tundra Raid. We're now 10 stages completed and 1 or 2 to go, but it's the Lumimi team with a comfortable lead over the Pepperoni team. Well, this is the start of the stage 11, Soriselka to Sodankila, again leaving what is known as the Christmas village. Team number 4 currently lying in second, that's the Pepperoni Zenith team, and they've started to look good in the later stages of this competition. They've won the last 2 legs. Christmas Village team getting underway. Well down on the leaders. The leading team starting first on each day, so it's the Limimi team who get away first, and Christmas Village a little bit further down the order, but they're still in 4th place behind Team Arena, and the difference between them is 3 hours, so very little chance of Christmas Village making up a place, but not so much time between themselves and Team Tomoki, who are lying in 5th place, just 30 minutes or so behind the Christmas Village team. The real battle, though, is at the top, and this is perhaps the last opportunity for Pepperoni Zenith team to make some ground up. They're looking very good indeed over this stage. 1 hour 45 for them. That's a fast time, considerably faster than Limimi, who had a couple of technical problems. So the Pepperoni Zenith team doing well indeed on that 11th stage. They gained 1 hour and 2 minutes over Lumimi, so they've cut the lead to 1 hour 18. They've cut it by almost half. Now, with one more stage to go, if they can do a repeat of that, we could well see a very tight finish at the top. So, arriving in Sodankila, in darkness, there we see confirmation of the positions at the moment. Team Arena still in 3rd place, Christmas Village away behind them, but still fairly close between the 5th, 6th and 7th team, which is the tracker team. As I mentioned earlier, 2 of the semi-professional teams have already had to withdraw due to technical problems, but that's not surprising. They've already done 1,500 kilometers or so of racing. Well, it's nearly every team that is suffering from mechanical wear and tear at this stage of the race, and that stage 11 really did take it out of both athlete and machine. We get a chance to have a chat to one of the racers.
Maybe something metal noise, that it's maybe this gearing box, I think so. Okay.
Well, the last of the stages, incorporating stage 12 and 13, is 258 kilometers of racing. And as we know from experience, that's going to take around 2.5 hours for each leg. So averaging speeds well over 100 kilometers an hour. There you see the route map once again. Sodankili is playing host to this Tundra race, and well, there's a variation on the theme. And I think the Yeti has emigrated from Nepal and finding himself at home in the Lappish Tundra. Now the conditions really are getting very difficult indeed, and it's the visibility that is providing the problems now. Very difficult to read the terrain, and the speed's dropping as a result of that. Well, it doesn't look good for tomorrow's racing. The conditions getting a lot harder, and it's the flat light that really provides the problem. And we've heard over the winter season many of the top skiers complaining that the light is flat, the conditions are dangerous, and it's exactly the same for these snowmobile drivers. And although they're out in the open now, it's when they get into the woods that they may well have some major problems. Well, I think that's the equivalent of what we call a rain dance taking place in one of the teepees. And if you travel to the north of Finland, you'll see teepees like this all over the place that the hunters and the herdsmen use as accommodation as they're moving their reindeer from one part of Lapland to another. Well, whether it was the chanting or what, I don't know, but the conditions have become very difficult indeed. And a major storm overnight put a lot of fresh snow down on the course, and now they're just crawling along, trying to get to the finishing line and the completion of this 2,000-kilometer Tundra Raid. Well, now approaching the finish, and it's still Lumimi with a lead. As they entered that last stage, they still had an hour clear of the nearest rivals, Pepperoni Zenith. And, well, in these conditions, anything can happen. But Lumimi looking very competent indeed as the Christmas Village team make a final break. They're well up with the two fastest teams and putting in a good performance at the end of this race. The Lumimi, remember, winning the first 4 stages and really benefiting from the fact that the Pepperoni team had a major mishap on the very first stage of the race. Problem with their suspension, and they lost over an hour and a half on that occasion. And now they're only just over an hour behind, so they'll look back with a little bit of regret at that incident on the first day of competition that was up in Kivas Rovaniemi. Well, out of the safety of the woods and into the tundra once again, and that's where the navigation is going to become very severe indeed. And they stopped to do a little bit of map reading, and obviously so much harder to see the markers. And although they have the route card, they're only the route is only marked every half a kilometer or so, and so plenty of time and distance to go wrong. And so they really do have to keep a very sharp eye on their course, and it's well worth sacrificing a little bit of speed. But they do that, and 2,000 kilometers after they left Rovaniemi, it's Team 1, Lumimi, who come across the finishing line in first place. Very close behind them, and a very good final leg by the Pepperoni Zenith team. 1 hour 18 quicker than the leaders in the 11th leg. They put in another good performance, and they come in just ahead this time of the Lumimi, but they haven't taken enough time off them, only 30 seconds between the two teams. Coming in third place, the Christmas Village team, so they've put in a charge in the later stages of this Tundra Raid. And in 4th place on the final leg was Team Arena, a time of 2 hours 53.27, just 26 minutes behind the leaders. In 5th place, the Tracker team, 2 hours 56, so very close between themselves and Team Arena. And in 6th place, Team Tomoki, just dropping off the pace at the final stages. So the winners then of the 1997 Tundra Raid, it's Lumimi 1, Dianov, Niemela and Urakainen. They come in with a comfortable lead of 1 hour and 18 minutes after the 2,000 kilometers, and receiving their check there for 22,000 finish marks for the team. And as I said, that won't cover the cost of the race, but they'll get a check towards their entry fee for next year's event, and no doubt we'll see them back in action. So with 4 stage wins, it's the Lumimi team who take the win, and they were never lower than 2nd on any stage, although they did lose a little bit of time on the 11th leg, but not enough to worry them. It was the Pepperoni Zenith team in 2nd place. Unlucky on the first day, having mechanical problems on the very first stage. But they improved as the race went on and went on to win the last 3 special stages in the event. And they'll certainly come back next year with hopes of going one better. Team Arena then in 3rd place, 6 hours 20 off the pace. They lost time in stage 9, where they lost 2 hours and 15 minutes. Otherwise, they were nearly always in the top 3. And if they can just pick up on their mechanical efficiency, we should see them in with a chance next year. The other 3 teams to complete Christmas Village were in 4th place, the Tracker team in 5th. And Team Tomoki, well, 11 hours and 39 minutes behind the winners Lumimi, but they come in 6th place. 2 teams dropping out, that was Lumimi 2 and the Polar team had to drop out in the early stages with mechanical failure. Plenty of the adventure teams completing their race, but they did take a different and shorter course. So let's hope that next year the conditions just a little bit colder to ensure that all the lakes are iced over. And of course we'd never complain if we had a little bit more snow. But a good event nonetheless, only one day where the weather conditions provided problems at all. The first 4 days absolutely superb, blue Finnish skies and the conditions ideal for snowmobile racing. Finland very much the centre for snowmobile activity, whether it be racing or recreational. And certainly if you're looking for an alternative to a skiing holiday, it can be highly recommended. Not cheap by any counts, but a lot of fun to be had there on the snowmobiles. And for the environmentalists amongst you, it should be known that they do have noise restrictions. And there are certainly areas where you can't take them. Well, there you see it. The next rally will be next year, and certainly it's going to be another thrilling event and racing through some of the most spectacular scenery in northern Scandinavia. So we get a final look at the Lumimi team, the winners of the 1997 Tundra Raid, with a total time of 19 hours and 23 minutes for the 2,000 kilometer race. So managing to average over 100 kilometers an hour, and on many sections exceeding 170 kilometers per hour. So fast racing throughout. And that really a result of the good conditions in the first 3 days of racing. Well, that's all from here in Finland. I hope you've enjoyed the Tundra Raid. We'll be back next year with more. From myself, Patrick Winston, thanks for your company and goodbye.